Are we live at this point for our 6 o'clock session? Okay. Good evening. At 6 p.m., I will call to order the November 19th Columbia Borough Planning Commission work session. At this time, we do have a quorum for the work session. Nate Roach is not present at this time. I have not heard anything whether or not he will be attending. Could we have a roll call, please?
Brad Lynn,
Here.
Justin Evans,
Here.
Mary Wickenheiser,
Present.
Tiffany Lynn,
Present.
Marilyn Press Hartman,
Here.
Nathan Roach,
Okay, thank you very much. Just a brief comment. The map that is before you on the table, that pertains to the next to the last item on the regular planning commission meeting, just
Okay.
in case you were not sure where that falls. Okay, we have not met for quite a while as a work session. So at this time, I would look for a motion for discussion regarding the minutes for the August 20th Planning Commission workshop meeting that are in your packet. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Tiffany. I have a second from Justin. Any discussion, comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. All right. As I said at our last meeting, I did go to the council meeting and advise them that we would be moving forward, working on this consolidation of the zoning districts from the 17 to the 7. And the reason we felt we could move forward is it's in the comp plan and council approved the comp plan. So that's what we're looking at here this evening. Okay. I'm looking, you have both the proposed map as well as the existing map. You also have verbiage describing this future land use map. And consolidating down to conservation, downtown mixed use, gateway commercial, high density residential / downtown industrial, low medium density residential, parks open space, utility. So that's what we are looking at moving forward with. And I will relate to the members of Planning Commission. One of the things, when I was meeting with Paula, there was a question whether we are looking at doing a complete rezoning, a complete redo of our zoning ordinance, which at this time, I feel we can tackle these small projects. To me, to redo the rezoning means to look into redoing your different descriptions, your definitions, going into all of that. And I really don't think, in my opinion, we don't need to do that right now. We need to tackle some of these other projects first. I'd like some feedback, how others feel, if this is the way we need to go, or the issue with doing a new zoning, you're looking at an expense there, an expense that the council would have to budget for. And looking at what is happening with the borough budget at this time, I don't think it's necessary that at this time. But I'm looking for feedback from the rest of Planning Commission here.
It seems like it's a big step to just consolidate the zoning districts,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's
Mhm.
a lot cheaper and easier, and we already know after talking about it for a couple of years that this is more usable than the 17 districts. I mean, I think if we start by combining them into how it's shown on the future land use map, then we can see where are going to be the sticky spots
Mhm.
if you just combine them and then work from there.
I agree.
I think it's a big step forward to making it easier.
I wouldn't think we would, rule out the changes to the actual zoning, but I think at least getting to that point to where we realize, yes, it's necessary, at that point, we can make a decision.
Yeah.
If we can do it without having everything rezoned, obviously, that's a better way of going about it from an expense standpoint. But we also don't want to do things kind of halfway.
Yeah,
Right.
I think what's going to have to happen, let's just say we figure out, generally you can see which districts fall into being combined together on the future land use map. What I think the hardest part is going to be trying to figure out which properties are going to become like a non-conforming use if they're changed
Right.
to something. Because that's what is probably the most difficult for administering it, like for the staff, right?
Sure. Right.
So a business gets put into something else and then it's hard to do anything to like expand or whatever. So I think those are what you'd have to go through one spot at a time based on how the map is going to change.
Right.
And I don't know if like Jessica, if they could do anything with maps or if we give our first crack at it and then, the staff can work with us to say, okay, if this is a change, is this going to be a problem for that property?
So I think that's how this all was originated.
Yeah.
It came from Derek and Jessica, like kind of, hold on a minute, this could be extremely expensive. Maybe you want to talk about that. So that being said, if we can work our way towards it without jumping off the cliff, so to speak, let's do that.
Are there problems with the ordinance overall, or are there big parts of it that are causing problems, like whether it's for the staff or for property owners? Why would you rewrite the entire zoning ordinance unless it was all?
Are any definitions
applicable.
missing?
So
Yeah.
I think the
Different land
definitions
uses.
are, at least in my opinion, I think they're pretty darn close to what we will end up with.
Okay.
It just depends on the changes and where we move things from. There are going to be some, because you are going from 17 different districts down to
Yes.
7. So
Right.
there's going to be some text changes that have to be made.
Yeah.
Again, if we can do that internally, that's, and just maybe have it reviewed, that would be
Ideal.
an option. Or if we got to that point where we didn't feel comfortable going any further without, having Jessica and them involved. I mean, Derek's going to be here this evening.
Right.
He might be able to better answer where he thinks we can go without having,
True.
without having a lot of
Running up a big bill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. But I think we can do a lot. At least get it set up.
Well, now that you have Deb back, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see that it's going to cost much.
I think we're going to be twice as productive because she'll be the historian of the planning commission and the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Yes, they are. Okay. like I'm in my face right now.
One of the papers.
So the other thing that I had included here was the tables of permitted uses for these different um, zoning districts. I feel that that's, you go changing, combining the zoning districts. This is one area within the zoning ordinance you would have to look at to make changes as to what would be permitted within those new combined districts.
Yeah, what's going to happen is when they're combined, so if you look at the zoning ordinance now, you can see just kind of roughly, like I outlined it with about where the future land use ones are,
Right.
right? So then you can see like the downtown mixed use, which is the salmon color one on the future land use map. So you can see underneath it covers up downtown commercial, what existing downtown commercial, MDR, LB, RC, and neighborhood commercial are all now going to become downtown mixed use.
Mhm.
So then you can start to blend the tables together and see where there's differences. And
Right.
hopefully there's not a whole lot of differences.
Right.
That's one example. The residential is another.
I must say, Justin, I am leaning on you heavily on this.
With my,
With your
I
experience.
get the crayons out there.
Right, right.
But no, just roughly looking at,
Mhm.
1-to-1, see like the low,
On the existing map.
like some of these are already combined. RR and LDR are combined. And now MDR is going to be combined into the same thing. So you can see the difference of what would happen if you combine them all.
Like what you're looking at
Twin
there
dwellings, yep,
is
exactly.
that area out in the east end.
Yep.
Where you're basically.
And all that light yellow,
Right,
that's out on the northeastern end.
right, up in the northeastern end too.
Yeah. That's all low to medium density residential.
Mhm. I don't know that your parks and open space, there's much of a change there.
No, those are kind of specialized areas.
And your conservation is basically the same.
So I saw that
What I'm
conservation.
doing is trying to say, these are areas we really don't need to look at as closely.
Exactly.
Like the conservation, the parks and open space.
Yeah, it's the residential and the
Downtown, the
ones that have
commercial, the
blended.
highway commercial,
and industrial.
and industrial.
So
Right.
general, light industrial, and light business, which is the business part. All
Right.
those would be industrial. They would just be one district. So you got to see on the table, and of course, there may be differences inside.
Different shades of purple.
Do you see that?
Which
The
is,
yellow and the orange
right,
are
this,
now together.
right, and up in here
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
So if you look at the table for the residential districts,
Mhm.
you've got rural and low density residential are already together. That's the dark green, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
up on the hill. So now that's
Right.
going to be part of low density. And then you add medium, so you go down to the second one. Usually in the rural residential and the low density, you can't have a duplex, twin side by side,
Right.
row houses, things like that. But they're allowed in medium.
Mhm.
to a certain limit.
Also want to make a point that with all of that changing, the table of dimensional requirements will have to change too.
Right.
So that'll be,
You have to merge all those
Yeah.
setbacks and everything.
Right.
You're right.
that's
Mhm.
gonna heavily affect that. Because each individual one is broken out, including medium density residential business and medium density residential.
Mhm.
Those are broken out separately, so, and they do have some different requirements based on setbacks, lot coverage. So
Uh-huh.
bring that to the table here.
I think that's the hardest part, is the use table and the setbacks and everything.
Mhm.
I'll have to look, I'm not necessarily sure if there's, like, for example, the medium density residential and the medium density residential and business. I'm not sure how similar those two are, that maybe only a difference of 5 feet in setback or, same lot coverage, but if it's like 30% lot coverage for this one and 60% for this one,
That's quite a
That's a big
Yeah, what do you
difference.
do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to just merge them on the map.
and that's just an example. I'm not-
Yeah, yeah, it is.
That's the only trouble.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere.
I'm not sure how you would avoid having a lot of non-conforming uses.
Yes.
Just don't, I mean, whichever way you go, I mean, even as it is right now, we have,
Right.
they're not
Grandfather
conforming,
in.
Mm-hmm.
so.
Sure. That's right.
So I'm going to come right out and ask, is it worth proceeding with this? Does it make sense to proceed?
Would it
with
cause
this?
more problems?
Are we opening a can of worms here? Because of the possibility of the number of non-conforming uses that you would have within these new zoning districts.
I mean, it's
I
very
guess
clear
my
to
question,
read.
Mary, to you would be, what is the ultimate goal? What are we trying to achieve? I mean, if it's, we're trying to achieve simplicity in our zoning, I'm not so
Yep.
sure this is going, I mean, it's gonna decrease our, from 17 to 7, but.
Yep.
But all that doesn't make our map clear, doesn't really.
But the one that you have is very clear. So combining them, I don't know, like
Yeah.
you're saying, if it's worth it to then have all these different changes and things that may not be able to just be conformed.
Yeah, it's a big step.
And that's why we're having this workshop and why we're having this discussion. You know, this was part of the comp plan.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for us to pull it out, to discuss it, to see where we want to go with it. Marilyn, any thoughts from that end of the table?
I don't think it's necessary at this point, unless something's instigating it along to get it done. We can put it off.
You're asking if there was a specific need?
Yeah, I'm just saying because there are other issues we want to deal with, smaller issues. Let's get them off the table before we tackle something this size, if we need to at that point.
Do you get feedback about, I mean, other than not wanting to be told what to do or get a permit, like, do you get feedback from engineers, or maybe that's kind of a Derek question too? You know, are there areas that people are kind of continually saying, like, this should be different? Specific areas.
Well, with my last years of experience in doing things within the borough,
Yeah.
I have yet to find something that's conforming.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter what we do, it was always non-conforming, and I don't know how you would change an area
Yeah.
to make everything within that area conforming
Right.
without changing your entire zoning. That's just, I mean, it's just kind of the nature of Columbia.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's built over a period of time and, you know, with the limited amount of growth that we have, I don't think we want to make it any more restrictive,
Right.
but,
Exactly.
um,
There was no zoning when the town was built.
Things just
Yeah,
unfolded.
So, I mean, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I think it, you know, ultimately it would clean everything up and make it a lot easier to have those zones. But then, you know, it would be your definitions of what you can do in those zones.
Right.
Is really what's going to matter.
Right.
And if we just kind of join them all together, they all do have different
Mhm.
setbacks and
Right.
requirements and,
Yeah, like Alex said, then you're really opening.
right. But that's why we have that.
Yeah, that's right. You know,
Yeah,
maybe you can figure this all out. 6th month on the job or whatever, right? You
Yeah.
know, somebody cracked the code. But no, in all seriousness, that's the question. Is like, well, what's wrong with it?
mhm.
Definitely run into a lot. I mean, this, I guess you can just consider this a complaint from residents. But a lot of them say that, you know, my neighbor have these requirements on this side and then this one has requirements on this side. Because there's so many different zones.
Yeah, right.
So I will say it'll definitely help out a lot with,
With
it's
that.
not as complex
Uniformity.
Mhm.
for both, you know, me to figure out all the requirements for them and the residents to understand. So,
But then you'll definitely have to adjust the tables
Yeah, all the numbers.
to
lot.
align with it.
Yeah, so what kind of setback issues? Because a lot of times we see these zoning hearing cases that have to do with like
Mhm.
dimensional nonconformity. Sometimes they're used, but it'd be like, well, you know, we're going to rebuild this house, but yeah, it won't fit in the setback because if you want it to line up with the rest of the houses.
Mhm.
So that seems to be a lot of the zoning hearing board type of things. We'll tear down this old garage that's crumbling, but you know, rebuild it, it's got to fit. You can't just go back where it was before without a variance.
That's what they're gonna be going in front of the zoning hearing
Right.
board with the one on Fifth Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's dimensional.
Mhm.
run into that a lot, I feel like, when we get into new row homes being built and them building on a new piece of land, they have to get a variance for every dimensional, you know, if they want zoning relief on every dimensional, you know, discrepancy.
Yeah.
So, and when you have 5, you know, a lot of those are obviously in high density, but, or some downtown,
Right.
you still have to comply on new tracts of land with the 5 foot or, you know, it's mostly 5 foot or 10 foot, you know, setbacks. So, like you said, there's one for a de minimis
Mhm.
dimensional variance.
Sure. So you still got to go to the hearing and everything. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if there's a way to write it in there to where you can replace it, you know, similar to that, like a row house or whatnot. You know, the low density areas,
Right.
you know, less so because it's a different, you know, they have more space.
Mhm.
I wonder if there's a way to do that. But that's probably a solicitor question.
Sounds like it.
The only drawback is that is a way that like non-conforming structures that may be in the way of something, you know, if they were ever to come down, that they have to be moved back.
Well,
But that's how often, how much of that do we have compared to?
it's not often. We do have the flexible residential development program that you can go through, which offers zoning relief. That is, I believe that's a conditional use you have to go through.
Okay.
It offers minimal, whatever obviously the minimum relief possible to
sure.
still be able to go with that project. So there is that, but it's still, it's actually more lengthy to go through that than to just get variances for each. They have this whole system
Yeah.
set up to get those variances or get that zoning relief, but it's actually just a whole lot easier just to do individual variances for
Okay.
each.
Well, that's-
Does it cost more?
That's what the Habitat went through on South Fifth Street,
Yeah.
and that's what Valley View's going through on the South Ninth Street with
Okay.
those townhouses. They're back to us tonight.
You know?
So they came to us to present, to use that flexible residential, which we made the recommendation, it went to council, and they allowed them to use that. So now tonight, they're back to us with the plans. They didn't submit plans until they knew they could do that.
Got
So I think their plans then are more in line with what that permits, that I haven't gone through it that much, but that it probably will not cause them to have to go to zoning for any kind of variances or such.
I think it's still, I'd have to look into it more. I could have more information on that. I do know it involves a conditional use. And as far as cost goes, I do think it is more expensive because you can, with our zoning hearing applications, submitting a request to the zoning hearing board, you can submit multiple variances. So you're only paying for that one hearing.
One
Mhm.
application.
Yeah.
Right.
And then when you get into the flexible residential development option, you get into multiple types of zoning relief. Not necessarily there. I think I'd have to look into it more. Like I said, I know there's a conditional use in there, but I'd have to see what other zoning reliefs in there. But I think that ends up being more money than
Oh,
just
okay.
doing it individually because
So it's more
Do it
expensive
together.
and slower.
take
From
it out
us.
take it out with a grain of salt because I do have to. I want to confirm that, but
Yeah.
it seems like a much more lengthy lengthy
Process.
process to go through. Now I know that was directly, or I think our ordinance is directly derived from municipality's planning code because that is flexible residential development is from the NPC. So I'd also have to look at how they have it, how they have it set up in there.
Yeah, I was looking for a date here. Because that was June or July, that they were to us to present that they would be allowed to use that. And then it went to council, and now it's back to us tonight for the actual plans to review. So we're looking at what, July, August, September, October, we're into November now, so
Yeah. So
we're looking at 5
Although
months here.
In that time, they also probably had to do the utility design and
Mhm.
everything. That's
Well, they had none of that.
Yeah.
They had none of that designed when they were here.
Yeah. So
You know, it's basically conceptual.
we're not saying it takes 5 months
Yeah.
for it to go through council by any means because they have time to do it took them a while.
Right. Because when that went to council, there was questions about, well, what about your stormwater? What about this?
Yeah.
And the comeback is that's what we will do next. you
Yeah, I don't
know.
want to spend $50,000
I don't wanna spend
if I don't know I can
$50,000
do
if I
this.
can't use
Yeah,
this,
and
you
it's
know,
like, yeah,
so-
okay, that's fair. Yeah.
So that went that way. So Brad, your thoughts? I haven't heard from you yet.
I think that the way that Columbia was originally set up, like Steve said, we do have a non-conforming almost no matter what we do in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
This map is extensive and it's just way too much. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the best decision is. I honestly don't. I never remember when, a few years back, when we had a gentleman down on the
And on the riverfront.
river, along the riverfront. There was almost, he owned those buildings, there was almost nothing that he can get to come into those buildings.
Oh, yeah,
Nothing was conforming. And it was one business after another, and they were throwing themselves at him. And he couldn't put anyone in there because of our constraints. So certainly breaking it down to that 2040 map is certainly the way to go to make things easier on people that want to do business in Columbia, people who are already doing business in Columbia.
And to align with Columbia 2030.
Yeah, the future land use.
Yeah, the thing that might make the most sense, maybe it's not the whole residential thing, because the residential stuff is what, that's where neighbors get upset with neighbors, because this
It's
is
what
too
affects
close.
people
Yeah,
more directly.
but like combining some of the commercial districts around downtown, like the riverfront, the main downtown, and then the purple there, might be worth looking into, like, see the purples are blended, medium density residential light business. So those would be combined into downtown mixed use. Maybe that might be worth looking into. Consolidating some of the business districts instead of spending a lot of time doing all of it. Would that make it easier for businesses to, different types of businesses to try things? I don't know. Because you're right, we had that problem.
When you look at a lot of the streets right now, even our South Fifth Street, you have so many different things going on. It's just on one block.
At this point, it's just, yeah, and how much parking plays into that too. But it would just be, at this point, there's some places that where it's just like, if any business would move in there, it would be worth something, you know, it's set vacant or whatever. You did see that a little bit when the business downtown went up Walnut a little bit more.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
We did that.
definitely.
there were some pretty noticeable old storefronts that had turned residential or something that are now reused for commercial. And it's like, well, it actually looks like something in town, you know, not an empty building. So I think whatever could be done to help with that, again, without, you know, really impeding on residential areas, but, you know, pushing the edge a little bit in areas like that to where there's empty buildings because nobody can really live in it. That's probably the most pressing, if you would think, because like Brad said, you know, the guy kept coming back. We felt terrible, but he wasn't getting here anymore.
Mhm.
It wasn't a hardship situation. But we all agreed, filling that with a business, and now there's something really
It's really nice.
thriving there.
So the downtown mixed use would be a combination of downtown commercial, riverfront commercial, medium density residential business.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the purple. And the neighborhood commercial zoning. And it also includes the highway commercial zoning district.
Yeah, some of
That
it,
makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly.
And I would think that in those areas, you won't have as much of an issue with changes in dimensions
Yeah,
as you might combining some of the others.
right, the business areas.
And this would help us if we were to look at that downtown mixed use. As you said, that includes those properties that were rezoned in 2019 that we never got back to relooking at the uses and the tables. And possibly if we were to tackle that,
That would be the best area to focus, especially if you're gonna concentrate on one first. I
so
think.
do we focus on an area?
Downtown, the business, the
Downtown
riverfront.
mixed
That
I mean, that's
downtown-
probably the more, you start monkeying with the residential districts and that's where things can go wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but
Awry.
But combining more of the business areas and allowing more
Right.
different things in those areas, probably, I mean, it could be well worth it, you know?
I agree.
I mean, especially if there's demand.
We
Right.
want to make it easier for businesses to come to Columbia. We want to make it more welcoming.
Kind of hard to argue with that.
And that kind of cleans up some nice spaces when
Mhm.
So, I have one
Okay.
Back to Jessica.
more. Check out what the changes are on the tables. And I think we also need to see possibly if we could get some information on what the different dimensional requirements are
Yeah.
for those different districts.
Out of the zoning
To
book.
see out of the
Yeah.
zoning book, to see if that's the direction we want to go with this.
So that,
That's a good idea.
I guess it sounds like we kind of, we're gonna focus on the downtown mixed use, the same
Right,
color on
that's,
future land
yeah,
use.
the second one there.
Right.
On the land use map.
I will say in the comp plan, really the biggest reason for doing this, why it's heavily suggested in here, is simplifying the code.
Yeah.
That's really all it
Yeah.
says in here for that. It seems, there's some methods that they have listed in here for, form-based coding, and
Right,
Right,
it's quite a,
So there's like
there's a
two,
long reason.
two main practical things. One is try to make it easier for businesses to do something in the business areas. And then two, somehow find out how to make it easier for somebody to rebuild. You know, like in the dense areas, the row houses, to be able to rebuild in a similar spot without,
Fill up those gaps.
yeah, without having to take the risk of not getting a variance or something like that, if it makes sense. If it's residential and it's going in the same spot. We ran into that with the the Habitat about, 15 years ago or something. They had to rebuild a bank of row of houses. So that sort of thing should just be allowed.
those are the ones down on Perry Street.
Yeah.
Perry Street, yeah, that's it.
I've already had somebody question that, somebody, yes, a while back had subdivided their land, they had a row home and then they had a side yard that's pretty large. They subdivided it, want to sell that piece of property. Guess they weren't looking too much ahead to our code and
Oh, yeah.
didn't realize you can't really do much with that, just because of our requirements. He was talking about adding like an ice cream shop or something. Building an ice cream shop, it's a little different considering there's no businesses where they're wanting to go, but either way, they can't do anything with that piece of land. It's
Too small.
just a yard now. Just an example of that.
Okay, so we will continue this at our next workshop, looking specifically at that area and what we can do with that. So, looking at our agenda, I think that also covers the item B there, future land use zoning map and tables. Long-term goals. I'll give you some more homework. What do we, as a planning commission, want to set as long-term goals that we want to accomplish? At one point, we had started, just off the top of my head, the official map. That kind of died with COVID.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were working on that. And I know council has some legislative things that, and I was looking for that table and at the last minute and couldn't find it, that there were some different things on there that they were looking at us to work on. I know the zoning, to finish that issue with the 2019 zoning ordinance to adding those properties to the downtown commercial. We had said we would look at the tables and the different uses there. And that was one of the things on there. I think they had the short-term residential on there, and I have some comments on that. So just kind of think of, are there things we need to be working on? Like I said, the official map, that kind of fell off the view of everybody. We were looking at that. Our official map at this time still has the properties out there where 441 went through. Those properties were on our official map. You know, so this
Yep,
needs
needs
to be
updated.
needs to be updated. And just to let you know, on the STR ordinance, it was presented to council, and they did not move forward with it. They tabled it. There was comments about redundancy within the ordinance. There was even a comment made, do we combine the short-term and the long-term rental ordinance? Do we just have one rental ordinance? So, right now, council's main focus is getting their budget set for the year. So what we would be looking is possibly after the first of the year, maybe at one of these workshops, we have a joint meeting with council to see what they are looking for in the short-term residential.
Yeah, how did this come up originally? Oh, with the denial of the block, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then who asked for it to be looked at?
As far as
The ordinance to be
Ordinance.
amended.
this happened, this has been ongoing for almost a year.
Sure.
And I think it initially came from council.
Oh, okay.
I'll
That's
look
good.
at it. I think this was on their list of legislative actions that they were looking
Okay, well then
at.
that's, if they asked for it, you know, that's on their
That's where
timeline,
we-
that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if like
So-
somebody was expecting us
No,
to move on this quickly.
Well, don't
so-
you have some people waiting, or at least
well,
someone?
it did come up that there are some people who are looking for short-term rental approval licenses, and that they should just be treated at this time under the current short-term rental ordinance, that's the ordinance that's in effect, that's where they need to be governed at this time.
I would already advise these people to follow the current ordinance.
Mhm.
But I also expressed to them that there is one in the works, it's just a matter of when it'll be completed. And I would say to most people, that ordinance will help them out.
Mhm.
There's a little bit more flexibility, there's a little bit more, there's more verbiage, but there's nothing in our ordinance now. You know, it's just a clarity in these. There is some short-term rentals, but not enough. Just seems like it's definitely help out with,
Mhm.
what's allowed, but tightening up on those requirements for if it is allowed.
How is
I think-
like disruption with the existing ones? Has everything been okay? You don't hear too much. How about you? Up the way, up your way?
Well, I was in checking it out online, and there are some short-term rentals that are being marketed, and it's not been approved by the borough.
Got it.
So I'm saying you might have a handful of 4 or 5 that are being that way, and how do you go in and close it down? So I don't know if there's a way to do that, and how are they getting them in there? Because what it is they're not advertising the address, but you know, it says Columbia. So I'm just not sure how to move forward on something like that. And what's legal and what's not.
So do you pretend you want to rent it and find out where it's at?
Cover, Mayor.
I don't go on those sites.
Well, you're just curious because you're curious about what's going on.
Well, it's the police that led us to it.
Yeah.
They got a call there and, along with a few neighbors. And we actually had to go get a search warrant. And got in there and found 7 rooms being rented. So.
In what house?
they was, So we did come in and registered it after paying a fine, condemnation, we had a whole,
Wow.
as a well. So,
I think it
Is it
was
approved? Did they get it approved?
it's done.
Or is it still, how does that work?
It doesn't go through me if it's a long-term rental, it's,
We'll do it now. Discuss
it's allowed, they don't have a date, that's all through Matt on the long-term rental basis, there's short-term rentals are for sure not allowed up there, but we specifically told them to only one person dwell it.
And then we got alerted to one down Norwood Street again. I can remember a few years back, being alerted to that one, and saying, police were getting out of it. And they basically said, we don't know. We're not renting any rooms out. So we didn't, to our knowledge, nothing was happening until, I believe it was Matt found probably one of what you're talking about,
Advertising.
listed on Airbnb.
Because they're on different sites and
Right.
Right.
And we shut one down over here on Cherry Street. also.
so do we go and just go in and say, I want a room for the night or the weekend and, hey, and bite the bullet on the cost and say, I'm just curious on how you stop it because,
Do you want a
They have to- they
staycation,
have-
Maryland?
yeah.
A staycation.
I'm just saying, everybody else has to follow the rules and then there's these other ones that aren't. So how do we fix that problem?
Well, didn't we actually have discussion that there are sites out there that track?
Yeah.
That,
Maybe just one.
you know, that you would be able to track anything within the municipality.
It searches all the listings, yeah, you know, and it matches up like Google Street View.
So,
Some of them put exterior pictures.
I mean, Google Street View.
I have a listing in Strasburg and they totally forbid short-term rentals. Not allowed in the borough.
I believe that.
So I'm just saying, there are boroughs that totally forbid them.
well,
I think it would be good to address it sooner rather than later because of people having them, of people trying to have them, and to have it all the way it should be. But I don't like the idea of combining short-term rental with long-term rental. I mean, would you? It just doesn't seem like that would be practical.
No, it's not the
Or
same, no.
the right way to go.
Was inconsistency in fees, like charging $500 for a short-term rental and $100 for a long-term rental. At least that was what the argument was.
Mhm.
I'm not taking a side either way, but if it requires yearly inspections versus 3-year inspections, all that stuff should be weighed into it as well.
I think the other thing was the formatting of the document that was before them. That it needed to be formatted better to actually reference what we had here, which was presented to council, didn't actually address section so-and-so.
Right.
if you're following me, you know, and
It needed finalized.
And yes, it needed finalized. It needed to be in a better format for people to understand just what was going on. So,
It sounds like there's time. If it's tabled,
Yeah,
budget is obviously number one right now.
so that will be happening sometime after the first.
with regard to the budget, maybe the fees need to be addressed and updated for long-term too, because you have to know how much work is invested in those. And technically, even though if they have the same tenants, they're only looked into every 3 years, they're supposed to be regulated, inspected every time someone moves into it, right? So
We don't do
it's
that.
kind of like the short term. That's only if you're made aware of it in the first place.
Well, the short term, we don't require that. We did initially. And
That would be way too much.
yeah,
Yeah,
so which hence why we do a yearly inspection
right.
in the short term.
But I'm saying you might have more administrative work with the long term. It's not necessarily that much cheaper in cost.
They're both subject to the disturbance calls, 3-strike thing, so it's the same, get the police reports and all that for both sides.
And the other thing is, council's still working on their nuisance ordinance, and I think that was referenced in the STR. So maybe it's better that they have that nuisance ordinance in place before
Yeah, that would be
moving
good.
forward with the STR.
I do have a meeting scheduled with them and to go over the nuisance ordinance and kind of combine that to what I think council was looking for. Again, I don't think they were looking for a ordinance change. But it may be required, so we'll go with that.
And last, it sounded like you're gonna have to pull a lot out of individual chapters of the code and
Right.
put it into a nuisance chapter, right? That's still the plan.
So we'll play at this point.
Okay, any further discussion on the agenda items here this evening? We've got some homework for next month, so it sounds like we will be meeting in a work session on Tuesday, December 17th at 6 PM. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
So,
Okay, so motion by Tiff, second by Brad. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:53. Thank you.